Perfect.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to RAPA's e-learning session for the week of June the 7th, I believe. Hi, Richard. Hi, Pierre.
Hi.
Hello.
I was just going to say, make sure that you hit the record button this time.
I think I did. I think
okay.
we go. So thanks everybody for joining us. Today we're going to be focusing on request fulfillment, and we'll jump in right away. Again, our format is a panelist discussion on key considerations, and again today related to request fulfillment and its role in service-oriented IT. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. Panelist, Pierre.
Sure. My name is Pierre Paquette. I'm the technical lead at RAPA Consulting. I've got about 25 years, probably a bit more, but I'm at that point where I don't want to say it's more than 25, in software development, in systems development, solution deployment. In the last 10 so years, I've been working in the IT service management space and asset management and SACM and business management.
My name is Susan Odell. I'm the business lead at RAPA, and a little over 20 years experience in enterprise technology, background in strategic planning, strategic accounts management, and have a diverse background in terms of technology, cross asset management, service management, document and learning management systems. And my role is to keep my eyes and our services focused on linking business and technical implementations and measuring results. Richard.
Yeah, my name is Richard Dava. I'm the IT service management lead with RAPA. I've been doing consulting work for over 25 years. The last 15 or more in and about IT management and IT service management. I definitely look at the process side of things and try to figure out how to make things work within an organization, then how to leverage the tools that Pierre provide to fulfill the business needs that Sue looks into. So together we're the three-legged stool.
That's great. Okay, so just again, housekeeping. We have 6 other sessions, 30-minute sessions that we've recorded. And if you visit rapaconsulting.com resources/videos, you'll be able to take a look at them. We are progressing the subject matter as we go through each session, talking about the business value of IT and then connecting the different layers in the IT component hierarchy and looking at success factors. Today, our focus is on request fulfillment. And just as a point of introduction, we are using the ITIL IT Service Lifecycle Management Framework as a backdrop for our discussion today, really because a lot of organizations are familiar with it, but it's also a fairly simple way of looking at service management and request fulfillment. But it certainly is by no means representative of the nuances that you can apply to request fulfillment or the complexities therein. And maybe, Richard, you could talk a little bit about why ITIL is a little bit of a simplified view and how you've seen it out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, so I mean, just by the name itself, where ITIL focuses on calling it request fulfillment, where in many organizations they'll actually call it service request management and say it's a same level of process as you would have with incident management. ITIL certainly focuses on simple requests that can be fulfilled fairly quickly, whereas service request management actually really would cover a wide range of requests. Requests being things that are new or changes to current status, as opposed to an incident, which is an issue or an event with something that's happening that you already have. So it's that distinction. ITIL kind of skims around it, but doesn't really focus, in my mind, on the whole capabilities that you would require from a request for service request management, or as they call it, request fulfillment. So the scope is greater, I think, than what we see in the ITIL context.
Right.
So, yeah, even outside of ITIL, when we talk about fulfilling requests or a service desk, and it seems to me, and what I've seen over the last 20 years, 17, 18, 20 years dealing in this space, has been it's about getting it's about getting information or getting requests from the clients. And over the years, we're talking more about service management and providing services to clients. But through the last many years, we've been talking about having that portal, having that ability for someone to go in through a catalog. And often this area has always been supported with tools, and that's my background is tools. So we've always talked about how can we make the catalog better, how can we make it a better user experience to get something, to fulfill requests from end users. And as Richard was saying, request fulfillment isn't everything. I mean, there's incidents in there as well. There's requests for information. So it's really that portal out to the end client to get them to participate.
So one of the key messages, without reading every bullet on the screen here, I think that is important is, thinking about how your organization is separating tasks within and activities within your service management organization. So, the idea of being able to treat service requests as its own function, and how the life cycle of those requests are managed and the nuances between those things that are pre-approved or things that might need to be escalated or could be treated maybe more transactionally than an incident or a change, which is going to be more involved and require more investigation, more research, more problem solving, I think is definitely a key point, that request management could potentially be more streamlined, even though it's not as simple as ITIL may define it to be. So
sure.
just as the next point, and we're going to dig a little deeper as we go into this, we wanted to talk a little bit about service desk, and that request fulfillment typically does reside within the service desk function, and that it is one of several, as Richard has indicated, views into IT and how end users can be supported. Typically, it is in place to support standard requests and provide standard information, but it can also be a deciding point to whether a request that comes in that can't be readily resolved through a pre-approved resolution to a standard request, how can that be either escalated through a non-standard request process, or should it be transformed into an incident that is managed entirely differently? The point is, from our perspective, that it is a critical process when it comes to service-oriented IT, because it is, for many of your end customers, the day-to-day point of contact and the frontline representation of what is in your service catalog. So it also becomes a key collection point of information about measuring customer satisfaction and metrics around management and how they're going to look at service strategy ongoing. So the formalization of it is really important. And Pierre, Richard, any other thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, certainly from, and I like this slide because it does show, request and incident as part of the service desk. In reality, those are the two requests, or service requests and incidents are the two entry points into IT, and both are really organized through the service desk. The service desk is the hub that keeps all these things going. And even initially, I mean, from a service desk perspective, when the phone rings for that first few minutes, you actually don't know if you're dealing with a service request or an incident. You have to actually make that decision based on the information provided by the user, and it should be simple for the users. It shouldn't be that if they want to make a request, they have to go through a different door than if they want to call in an incident. So the service desk plays a key role in that, but it does show that the request wheel there, or the request gear, is a separate one from incident. In a lot of organizations, everything's an incident of a different type, and request is one of those types. But in reality, the life cycle of an incident is quite different than the life cycle of a request, and there's really value in keeping those things separate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the other thing I like from this diagram is, if we were to add other cogs in there, we would start adding some of the other processes that are behind the scenes in terms of other things that happen. So yes, this is the entry point, but the request could spawn business activities to define new services. If there's a need for other services, and your clients are asking you for things that you don't do. I mean, this is great information to determine what IT is or what services IT provides. And to the point Richard made as well, is it comes in through the service desk and it becomes an incident, and incidents then may become problems, and it may have a linkage to change management as well as another process within your organization. So this is a pretty interesting picture.
It's a simple picture with a really important message, right, about understanding the roles within the service desk function.
Yep.
Okay, so what we've got on the left side here, and if you're not familiar with it, again, our advanced expert on the line is our ITSM lead, Richard, is certified in COBIT and ISO, as well as a master in ITIL. But the wiki you can see linked below here is a really good resource that we would encourage you to refer to if you are just beginning on your journey of best practice. There's some great free information there that you can use as a starting point. But we've got this here to just kind of talk to you about the request model. It is really critical if you're going to put in place best practice that you make it formal and that you manage it and you make sure that it's enforced. So the request model is all about defining predetermined steps that manage not only the service request across its life cycle, but the operations of request fulfillment as well, your people that are engaged in that. And that's people within the service desk team, but it's also the cross-functional teams that they have to interact with as they're trying to manage a service request. So, typically request fulfillment activity will be focused on things that are normally generated by the end user, but again, as Richard indicated, not always. And depending on how you design your service management model, this may not be the case. And depending on what industry you're in, I think one of the things we always like to talk about is that best practice, regardless of whether it's ITIL or COBIT or ISO or any other framework we can put in place, are intended to be, models that you would then apply to your unique case. And we can't stress that enough. You will never take any model, ITIL or anything else, and say, I'm going to follow a step-by-step guide and do things exactly the same way all the time. So I'll just pause there, and I don't know, Richard and Pierre, if you want to add anything to that point.
No, from a model perspective, basically what this slide is saying is that there's definitely advantages when you're dealing with standard service requests. You should have a standard way of responding to it and fulfilling it. It shouldn't be an adventure every time you get a request, whether to reset a password or to get a laptop for a user or something of that nature. We should have the steps all defined and know exactly what we need to do. So, modeling, standard service requests is essential. We just have to be cognizant that sometimes, unless we're very, very strict at what comes in, sometimes things may come in that don't fit the model, and we have to be able to respond to those too. So models, are perfect, and I think a great value to the organization. And but we also have to know that sometimes we have to react to something that doesn't fit the exact model. So this is important to think through.
Yeah, I guess the formalization process is really important to try and get the the 80% and deal with exceptions as exceptions, and then have that as part of your continual improvement cycle and seeing what kind of requests are coming in. What I find that's really important with implementing this and formalizing these processes is tied to what that last bullet is saying, is that each service request is managed by its own record and managed to closure. So just that bullet there is telling us that having a specific life cycle is important. Tracking the right type of data is important as well. And across the board, all requests would track a specific set of attributes. We're peeling the onion here down to more of the specific details of what that request would look like, but it's also very important because on one hand you want to satisfy and respond to client demand, and customer satisfaction is priority, keeping them happy, keeping them busy, and keeping them doing their work. But from a process improvement is to be able to then analyze the requests that are coming in. And to analyze it means that there are some specific attributes, data points that would be captured so that you can do some valid analysis and then and draw back from that information whether you are successful and whether you are providing value, or if you could be providing better value in processing the requests.
Okay. So Pierre, if you'd like to continue, I think this was some thoughts that you wanted to share on request fulfillment KPIs.
Right, in line with what I just said in terms of the key attributes that would be necessary in a request fulfillment tool, we are talking about being able to categorize and identify a life cycle of the actual process. So we are talking about statuses. So from that, you're able to draw, what type of requests are coming in, and being able to identify, how many have been drafted and opened and closed and canceled, so that you can get some valid performance indicators out of it. Time is important as well. I mean, one of the goals is to cut down on the time it takes to actually fulfill a request. So to be able to gauge that and to see if you are hitting your targets, you do have to have a time component in that as well. So there is there's a list of specific attributes that would be needed to be able to then have these KPIs. What's nice about that wiki link that Susan mentioned earlier as well is they get into some of the basic, maybe the top 10 KPIs that are doable and that are fundamental. There's no need to go crazy and creating all kinds of complicated metrics if you don't have these top 10 in place. I mean, you can if you want to start analyzing things down to detail, but looking at the KPIs, the basic KPIs, is a great start to see if you're successful in fulfilling the requests.
Yeah, I mean, I think the KPI discussion will come up at every process discussion. In the end, you can't you can't really say that you have a process in place if there's no way for you to manage how it works and understand how it works. And the way to do that is through KPIs and metrics. It's getting valid data. And to your point, Pierre, there's no point in trying to do 1,000 KPIs, or if you can't even get the basic data to manage simple ones. It's not the number of KPIs, it's the quality of them, and the quality comes with the quality of the data. So all of that works together. So it's really picking a few KPIs that are meaningful to your organization and making sure you have all the right values to measure them. So don't go wild on KPIs.
Right. Don't go wild on anything, right? You have a reason for everything that you're doing. Right.
Exactly.
So what we wanted to talk about now, and this is something that RAPA we believe in fundamentally, is that in IT there are many silos. There are different teams doing very specific things, but overall those things come together to either do something good, do something beneficial, maybe keep status quo, and if they're not done in alignment, sometimes they can drag you back a few steps. So our philosophy is absolutely that the silos within IT need to understand what each group is doing and how work in one area relates to work in another, because at the end of the day, the operational work, multiples of or combinations of the operational work feed into a tactical solution, whether it's a customer satisfaction benefit or mitigating risk or being able to report on costs. And those tactical achievements are a measure of strategic success in terms of the quality of service overall. So request fulfillment is absolutely no different. So what we wanted to do is just have a bit of an open dialogue about request fulfillment and its impact across some of the other areas in IT. I think, Richard, when we were talking just before we started the session today, you brought up the example of request fulfillment and IT asset management. Maybe we can start there and then just bounce around with a few examples before we end today.
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, request fulfillment, when we had the COGS earlier, we were kind of showing at the service desk is where it resides, but in reality, as many of the processes we discuss in IDLE or otherwise, it's cross-organization, and it brings a number of pieces together. So, in the case of a request fulfillment, if there is a request for a new workstation for a user, that should lead to, IT asset management from a software and a hardware perspective coming into play to making sure is it an inventory, do I need to order them? If I order them, it needs to be reserved to the right service request, and so on and so forth. And also, if we push back earlier and we talk about hiring a new user, hiring a new employee, well, it then brings in, the making sure that the email account is created, that the network is there's a network account put in place, there's place on the hardware, on the network servers for the that person to store data. All of that could be triggered through a request fulfillment process that goes right across the organization.
Yeah, it shows that the request fulfillment has these touch points across the organization. It also also leads to how those other, these areas that we've identified here in this picture, how they actually talk to each other as well. So we talked about the request fulfillment being tied to users and being tied to ITAM, to hardware asset management and software asset management. If we look beyond that, and we'll talk about those relationships in more detail, and we have been talking about those relationships in previous sessions, is how the service catalog is tied to hardware and software asset management. There's no sense in having a service request for something that the hardware and software asset managers aren't managing or cannot manage. So it really, there is that whole relationship of all of these elements across IT and the importance of them and how they all work together.
Right. We talked a little bit earlier as well about projects, how a service request that could come out of a business need that doesn't have anything to do with an existing tool. Maybe it's a capability that a particular division of the business does not have, and that request spawns a funded capital project that then has other trickle-down effects. So it's far-reaching where a request can go and the impact that it can have across IT.
Yeah, certainly, and Pierre, you were mentioning one thing that brought a point to mind with regards to the catalog, and you could go further and start talking about entitlement of who can actually make requests, which right now we haven't really discussed that part, but the front end part of if I'm a finance user, I can't request access to the HR system. It shouldn't even be an option in the catalog. So all of that entitlement is also something that surrounds the request fulfillment, so that you can actually filter stuff even before they come into someone at the service desk having to say, no, you're not entitled to that. So that's part again of making the things work together. If the service is well defined and this SLA is in place and it defines who can get what, then you can do entitlements, which is important.
Okay, great. So we have a few takeaways to leave you with today. I'll take the first one, and then we'll maybe just go around the table here. So it's a key process, and we can't forget this. And I was actually thinking this, Pierre and Richard, as you were covering points on the last slide, that everything we're talking about is coming back to the end user, whether your end user is a customer within your organization or a customer external to the organization. It all comes back to the point of interaction and interface into IT. And so if you're not able to manage your requests well, that has a significant impact on the quality of service, the perception of the quality of service that you're delivering to your customers. So it's critical to make sure that it's well managed, and as we've talked about, in order for it to be well managed, it has to be well defined, and KPIs are important so that you can check in and make sure that things are working as they should be.
No, for sure. lost my train of thought, so I'll get back to it. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
So on the second, sorry.
No, go ahead, Richard.
So on the second, yeah, on the second point though, ensure that you have the clear models. I mean, again, we were talking about top 10 earlier. Top 10 models is a good place to start. What are the requests that we're getting most often, and can we predefine them so that they're easy to deal with every time? That makes us a lot more efficient, and it allows us to do better from a customer or a client satisfaction perspective, which comes back to my previous point. Request management is one of those processes that shelters again, users and clients from the complexity of IT. That's why it's so important. We keep coming back to that theme, but it is essential, sheltering our clients from the complexity.
Yeah, when it comes to actually designing your request management systems, it's that third point there is key as well, as being able to measure. So when you're doing the actual design of what the requests look like and what information you're gathering, it's important to keep that in mind so that you can measure. So keep it simple. Gather the information as clearly as cleanly as possible. There are the exceptions, obviously, where requests will come in that are part of that 20% rule. But for the most part, it's really design it so that you can do your measurement and you can get your KPIs from it.
And the last point is something we didn't actually talk about in great detail, but it's big. The teams that are designing new services and releasing and building new capabilities and putting those into production, it's really important that they're spending the time to train your frontline service desk request management resources well ahead of the release of any of these new services, so that they are knowledgeable about new capabilities, new tools, new services, and can meet the expectations that customers have. So it's as much a responsibility as your development teams and product management teams to be able to communicate to your service desk teams as much as it is for them to do their job in escalating and resolving requests that come in. So that's a key component.
Yeah,
I guess one of the other takeaways here is that request management isn't something that can be done in a silo. You really have to be aware of all aspects of IT, from the services you're providing and the value that you're trying to get from doing service management all the way down to being able to measure it. So it's and then thinking about the stakeholders, the people who are going to be able to use that information from the business all the way down to the operations to provide better services.
So in 2 weeks, we'll have our next session on incident and problem management, and it, again, is always within the context of service delivery to clients and the roles of these two particular processes in that effort to deliver quality services to customers. Again, if you have any feedback, questions, or subjects you'd like us to cover, please send us a note to info@rapidconsulting.com. And with regards to the 20 silos within IT that we believe, it's critical to start looking at how that information, that data, the processes, and people come together. Would encourage you to take a look at Rapid Insight. There are a couple of 2- and 3-minute videos that can give you some insight in terms of how we're attacking that particular problem. Any last thoughts, Pierre, Richard?
No, I think we've done a good job, and I think it will be a good way to get into incident and problem, because they're so related. All these three things are so related.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, well, thank you both very much, and have a good day.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
You too. Bye.
Good one. Bye.